Good morning, beautiful people. It is Friday, the 19th of September, 2025. I'm Sonia Poulton. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and Guests, the show that tells it like it is, unashamedly so. How are you all doing in the comments, you beautiful people? I hope you're well. I hope you're absolutely well. Hello, Brett and Stephen and MT70 and Peter and Lisa and Bethany, Jane and Beasley and Aquaboy and London Lady and Drumstick and Merv and Vanessa. And here we go again. And Randy and Reba and you name it. And Cavan and Lynn and Chris and Marcuson and Robert and Marco and Colin Guthrie. Good morning to you all. Welcome to the show that knows it's easier to fool people than convince them they have been fooled. Thank you, Mark Twain. Yes, people. We live in a horribly deceptive world, and my job is to poke at it and see what sense we can make from all of the corruption. I hope you are hearing me well. How are you all? Can you hear me well in the chat? Please confirm. Love Twain quotes. Me too. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hello, Phil. Hello, Murray. Hello, Anita and Shug and John from Coventry. I already need a glug of lemon water. How are you doing? Hello, all. Simon says, Sonia looks tired. Do I look tired? Let me just address myself. Right. What's on Wake Up? Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I am tired. It's been one of those weird weeks, right? One of those weird weeks, but I'm not so tired that I'm not full of life. Right here and now. Oh, indeed. Let's see what's on Wake Up today. Well, today is going to be a slightly different format than normal. We often have Fridays for our investigations, but there's so much going on, rather, that I thought I would combine it with some news and do something a little different as well. So first of all, I want to look at Trump's UK second state visit, the royal banquet, the tech deal, Mandelson and Epstein headaches, all that sort of stuff. Plus, there's an assisted dying vote in the Lords today. We'll look at that. UN now again talking about genocide in Gaza, demanding some action. Also, it's heating up between the Macrons and Candace Owens. And I don't know what kind of game she's playing, but if I was her advisor, I'd tell her to quit right now. Stop. It is one of the worst litigation games I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've seen a few. More on that shortly. And arrested, the assassinate Starmer man. He's been arrested. And allegedly, he said that. And in Parliament, they've been asking more questions about Peter Mandelson. And so I said I want to do something slightly different. We're going to be having an extended long conversation with two great thinkers, former military man Johnny McNeil, aka Gaslighting Gilligan, and writer activist Francis O'Neill. I did ask Miri AF, because we do like her around here, but her bathroom's being done. There's too much noise, so she couldn't take part, unfortunately. So no doubt she'll be joining us again soon. Many of my viewers, including people who donate, including my patrons, have written extensively to me this week about the issues to do with around Charlie Kirk, all of the, well, just the cast of characters. And so I will be discussing all of that in, as I say, an extended conversation with Francis O'Neill and Johnny McNeil. There's two Neils going on there. That's interesting. I asked at the start of the week what's in a name, because there were two T. Robinsons who had been thrust center stage, Tommy Robinson and Tyler Robinson, the man accused of murdering Charlie Kirk. And we'll round off the show with the importance of trusting yourself in a time of great deceit. Oh, yes, indeed. How are you all? How are you all in the comments? I hope I'm not looking too tired, kids. Yes, hope you're all well. Mandelson is indeed a despicable individual, Stephen. Yes, indeed he is. Oh, yes. And right, let's have a look at, let's start with this, shall we? This is what I call the Windsor leeches, the Windsor leeches. So Donald Trump and Melania arrived for a second state visit. Really, it was to sign a tech deal, but more on that shortly. So they had their state banquet, as we talked about at the start of the week, and obviously led by King Charles. And this sort of imagery just makes me want to puke, but I don't think anybody could have summed it up better than Sam on X. Good morning to you, lovely. Good morning. She said, despite the opulence, everything radiates deviance. Looks like an eyes wide shut ceremony. The royals drain the scene of warmth. and humanity. Even with grandeur, wealth, it feels cold and suffocating, like watching a sick ritual you shouldn't be witnessing. Indeed, we shouldn't. And I think one of the few moments of, oh well, that's lighten the load, was this, when led by donkeys beamed these images on Windsor Castle. Of course, it's to do with Donald Trump and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It also includes the note that was in Epstein's 50th birthday book from Donald Trump, although Donald Trump alleges that it wasn't him, and is now suing I think it's the New York Times that said it was, and many others actually. And Thames Valley Police arrested 4 people on suspicion of malicious communication after this projection of Trump and Epstein appeared on Windsor Castle before his state visit. And we shall see what happens with that. I think that's fairly egregious, actually, because as one tweeter pointed out, Elon Musk was beamed into the middle of central London, and he was inciting people to violence, and nothing was done about it. But maybe that's what happens when you're a tech billionaire. Maybe you can do that. I don't know. Led by donkeys, they do some great campaigns, but they are also very much more establishment than many people realize. Nonetheless, I wholeheartedly approve of this. I wholeheartedly approve of it. And yes, Windsor leeches, indeed. Yes, indeed they are. So we had to go through all the kind of the farce of Melania and Catherine and Donald and William and Charlie and all of them, all of them eating large on our money. They make me sick. Like any of them, most all of them could do with missing a good meal, except Kate Middleton, because she sure looks like she's missed a whole lot. And I don't mean that in any way to body shame her, but I am deeply concerned about Kate Middleton and how very thin she is, given the issues of eating disorders that are prevalent in the House of Windsor, not least her mother-in-law, Diana. So, yeah, just that. So then we had the Trump and Starmer press conference yesterday, the tech prosperity deal. What a puke fest that was. What a puke fest. Starmer says UK and US have renewed the special relationship for a new era. In other words, they've all agreed to keep the lid on Epstein and Mandelson as much as possible. And no one must allow the Rothschilds to be associated with Mandelson or Prince Andrew, even though both have been good friends and enjoyed hospitality and even attended the wedding of Evelyn de Rothschild. But shh, Rupert Murdoch is great friends with the Rothschilds, by the way. And you can tell that because there is an almost total media blackout about any connection to the Rothschilds when it comes to Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson. And the newspapers all across the board, they are saying absolutely squat. Absolutely squat. They're quite happy for Mandelson to be highlighted, but do not associate it with the Rothschilds. Do not. Club members. Rotten childs, I call them, says Drumstick. I see you do. Ancient rituals indeed, Ian. Right, so back to the tech deal, kids. So what it is, apparently, is this tech prosperity deal is a consortium of US firms led by Microsoft. They include BlackRock, NVIDIA, OpenAI, Oracle, Amazon, and CoreWeave. They'll be investing $42 billion in the UK to develop AI for healthcare and various projects, nuclear projects. And they were very happy in this, but it was a whole puke fest, the whole thing. And of course, when it comes to the NHS, that's our records. You realize that, right? That's our records. And that's why they wanted the NHS app, digitalize the whole darn thing ahead of this deal. And Trump said a lot of his usual guff. He claimed the US and UK have done more good on the planet than any two nations in history. He says he will never forget this trip. He says the two countries are forever joined and will forever be friends. And this is the deal that they are working with. This is the memorandum of understanding between the government and the US. And Starmer says These investments should create 15,000 jobs in the UK, but it's AI. It will be losing a whole lot of other people their jobs, right? And Starmer says that the two countries were first partners in defense and trade, but now they are partners in science too. I told you it was a lot of guff. It's written by marketing people, strategists and PR people and spin doctors, what they were saying yesterday. So what is it? Well, apparently the purpose of this memorandum of understanding is to enable the collaboration. And the idea is that UK will now be accelerating our AI innovation. As I say, that will be going into all public bodies, including the National Health Service. And your records are for sale and have been for a rather long time. Trump says lots of bluff and bluster on an almost constant basis. I don't actually think he's well. I'm not sure he's functioning largely much better than Biden was at the start of Biden's term. But, you know, it's Donald Trump, so they let him get away with it, right? And he claims that he has solved 7 wars, but Putin has let him down. Putin has let him down. Solved 7 wars. Which ones would that be then, mate? Which 7 wars has Trump solved? They said that they had a disagreement on Palestine. Trump says that it's one of the few disagreements with Starmer is over Palestinian state recognition. And Starmer says he and Trump spoke one-to-one for about an hour on foreign policy. He argues for Palestinian state recognition. He says it will be a step towards the 2-state solution. Trump is very much held hostage to the Zionists. And we know that Kier Starmer is as well, but Trump is with bells on. Like, did anybody see when Trump gave Kier Starmer a pat when Kier Starmer laid into Hamas? And Trump gave him a pat, like, good boy, you're saying the right things. And Trump says that October the 7th was one of the worst days in the history of the world. Get a sodding grip, you orange imbecile. I started out, I was never a great fan of Trump, but I started out with he's signing some good agreements and everything. But at the end of the day, he's no different. And he says such ludicrous, stupid things. How could October the 7th be one of the worst days in the history of the world? And then they got asked about free speech. Starmer banged on about how we long have had free speech in this country. And despite Trump pulling him up at the White House earlier this year, Trump was more subdued this time because he knows what he's got his administration to do. Let's be real. The West does not have free speech and has been censored by bribery and corruption, by corporate pressure, by political points and compromised handshakes. People who shout loudest about free speech are the most totalitarian, and that includes the 2 grubsters currently on your screen, which is obviously Trump and Kier Starmer, not me. Trump is in no position to talk about how Starmer has strangled our right to expression, while his administration is criminalizing and barring people from traveling if they say hateful words about Charlie Kirk, a MAGA influencer. These people are all on the same side, the one that is designed to strip you of your rights and have you doing only what the billionaire tech bros say. I think this is a particularly good cartoon. In recognition of Charlie Kirk's commitment to free speech, we are calling for the firing of anyone who criticizes him. And if only this were a joke, they are going all out, crazy individual. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, she's literally going after people who are saying hurty words about Charlie Kirk. These people are crazy. What she does not look tired anymore. Thank you, Simon. I appreciate that. Thank you, Bex. Thank you for that super chat. You're a star. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Right. Let me see. And well, of course, royals have been busy this week. They also attended a funeral. Anybody see that? And this was for the Duchess of Kent. Pretty much the whole load of them showed out. The Duchess of Kent, it was said to have died peacefully at Kensington Palace on September the 4th. Another one living off the milk of our beautiful land. And there were many royals there, as you could see. There was grumpy Prince Andrew and his wife showed up, and William and Kate and Charles. Camilla didn't go. Apparently she had sinusitis. That's right, isn't it? Sinitis. That's right. Yeah, it's the nosy thing, right? That kept her away from the funeral, I bet. And we saw all of them out in force for that funeral. And, you know, it is no joke to say that a lot of the royals spend much of their day sitting around and getting drunk. That's what they do in their palaces. That is what they do. They're well-known drinkers, a lot of them. And certainly the Queen and the Queen Mother and Margaret, they were right boozy wenches. They used to get drunk on a constant basis. Nikki said, the people who are laughing at someone's assassination is just plain sick. She's talking about Charlie Kirk, of course. Official way to hold papers can be seen here. Not sure what they're talking about, but I get you. So yeah, they came out for the funeral. Yes, indeed, they came out for the funeral. And today we have another crazy woman back in the Lords. Her name is Kim Ledbetter, if you don't already know her. She is a member of Parliament. She is the sister of slain MP Jo Cox. And Kim Ledbetter got into Parliament on a pity vote because people really pitied her and her family because of what happened to her sister. Kim Ledbetter is a horrible politician, absolutely horrible. Her main goal is to see that we have assisted suicide in this country. She's an absolutely reprehensible individual, and they are back today for a Lords vote. They had the first part of the debate in the Lords last Friday, and this is the second part, and now they get the vote. And so there are strong supporters for and against this bill, but there are many problems still outstanding regarding this bill. I've talked to a number of people this week who will be voting against the bill. And what they're telling me is that there is nothing in the bill, for one example, that talks about alleviating pain, because there's this real focus on people experiencing extreme pain, and they essentially should be put out of their misery. And the people are saying to me that one of the problems is in the bill is that the only solution is early assisted death. There's nothing to address, you know, like decent hospices or alleviating the pain for these people. The solution is early death. And, you know, it's a shorthand title when they talk about assisted dying. But the reality is, let's just bring it up. This is actually, where is it? What did I do with it? I saw it on the screen a short while ago. Maybe I haven't brought it through. Anyway, but so the reality is it is actually the terminally ill adults end of life bill. So it's actually misleading to people because it is making people believe that they are coming up with decent solutions for people who are terminally ill. But actually they're only coming up with one solution, and that is to kill them. That's their solution. Okay. And it's led by this insane individual. And I've also been told that there is a really serious problem in the defining of what a terminal illness is. I've been told that there is a failure to be precise about this. Well, the problem is that's like anything. Okay. If there's a failure to be precise, that means it can be taken in a multitude of ways. And I've also been told that the concept of choice that they're talking about is a problematic one. And there are many reasons why this whole idea of an early death and what they are proposing is not genuine, and we should fight against it, because obviously palliative care, it doesn't alleviate all pain and suffering, right? Especially for those who can't get it. And that is part of the problem. A lot of the people that I've talked to said, well, the real problem we have is we don't have enough decent palliative care in this country. And the fact is, and it's horrible and you're not going to like it, but the reality is this is going to come down to money. Will we keep people alive if we can afford to, or if they can afford to remain alive? That is what it's going to come down to. And Derek, that's quite funny, that comment. But that's what it's going to come down to. Can people who are sick, can we as a country, as taxpayers, afford to keep somebody alive? Yes, of course we can. It must surely be a priority. It must surely be a priority. So I suspect that they may vote for it, which means that it will continue on its path. And how many more stages? Let me just have a look at my chart here. How many more stages they've got until it gets royal assent? So they've got the second reading today. Then it goes to the committee stage where they try and continue to iron out more details. Then it goes to the report stage. Then it is back in the House of Lords for a third reading after they've pummeled it a bit more into shape. And then the final stages are simple. It goes on to a consideration of any amendments and then the royal assent. But this is going through. We do realize this, right? They are absolutely intent on this going through unless it gets stopped, which I'm not convinced it will be. And I'm deeply, deeply concerned about it. B said her brother has struggled with MND without palliative care. And that is the problem, is that this bill is, even though it talks about like end of life, it is focused entirely on killing people early. That's what it's about, killing people early. And let us just talk about genocide in Gaza. The final conclusion of the UN's Commission of Inquiry is that Israel has committed genocide in the war in Gaza and that its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders are responsible for inciting that genocide. The International Court of Justice in The Hague has yet to issue its final ruling in the genocide case that South Africa brought against Israel last year. They say that while this is officially a conference room paper intended to help discussion, it may prove to be the final nail in the coffin of Netanyahu and his allies who continually talk about how there's no genocide going on in Israel. They put out adverts. They say people are eating in Gaza. They show the type of market stalls that you see in impoverished lands to illustrate that people are indeed eating in Gaza. And so what we have now is the Commission of Findings Inquiries now stand alongside Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Israeli groups, Human Rights for Israel. They've all published detailed reports concluding that Israel is committing genocide. Kier Starmer's government has previously said it cannot talk of genocide until a competent court has given its final judgment. But the Commission's findings make it clear that line is wholly unsustainable for the Prime Minister, who formerly prided himself on being a human rights lawyer, for goodness sake. Britain, France and Canada are all due to recognise Palestinian statehood next week. That follows 147 countries which have already done so. And as I say, Donald Trump made very clear at the press conference yesterday that he doesn't agree with it and he won't be supporting it. Well, of course he won't. He's been there, hasn't he? Kissing the wall. That's what he's done. That's what these people do. Kiss the wall, people, kiss the wall, kiss the ring. And big up to Jerry of Ben and Jerry, who walked away from his own creation on principle. Do I have a picture of him? Because do you know what? It's so good when you see some decently principled people. So Ben and Jerry, right? I don't always agree with all of their activism, but they do rather a lot of activism. Let me just show an image of these people, if I may. Have I got one there? Let's have a look. Ben and Jerry, here they go. This is, I think, admirable. So Ben and Jerry, obviously famous for their ice creams. And what happened yesterday was I think it was yesterday or Wednesday. Jerry Greenfield, who co-founded Ben and Jerry, he resigned on September 17th, so it was Wednesday. After 47 years with the company, he stated in a letter which was shared by his co-founder, Ben Cohen, that he could no longer remain in good conscience due to Unilever's restrictions on the brand's social activism, and that includes talking about the Gaza conflict. Unilever, of course, distributors, they bought out Ben and Jerry's, but obviously Ben and Jerry are original co-founders and are on the board. That takes a lot after 47 years to walk away from your own creation on principle. On principle. Rebel says, I have a weird view about things. Well, but you're here still listening, right? You're still engrossed. So enjoy the weird view, kid. And so I fully support that. I think that's great. And just to say, I think this is really important. I talked about I talked about the Tommy Robinson March on Monday. And I, acknowledged that even though there were Zionists leading it, I didn't see the usual array of Israeli flags. Well, thank you to everyone who sent me videos and images of Israeli flags at Tommy Robinson's so-called Unite the Kingdom March last week. I knew it was Zionists leading the march. I acknowledged that. I just thought they'd toned down their agenda at marches, as the footage I saw did not really show any of that. Alas, it was full on display of Zionism masquerading as patriotism. And so that's really what we're dealing with now. When people are saying, I am patriotic, they are really telling us that they are Zionists, because that's what that march was about. Lots of people there have been pulled in under false pretenses. I don't think they even necessarily realize what they are marching for. They think they are protecting their country when they are, in fact, protecting a foreign state. Oh, the irony. Oh, the irony. Oh, and by the way, these people are willingly bringing in a social credit score via their favorite billionaire, Elon Ketemin Musk, who has created a Chinese-style social credit system on X. The new X algorithm gives everyone a reputation score from between 0 to 100. And 0 is you have a minimal reputation and will not get much reach on the platform. And 100 is max reputation. So that's reserved for Musk's favorite fascists and racists, and they get full reach. It's a credit score. If you didn't know it, that's the deal. That's the deal. Marco says, Sonia going in with the names today, cracking me up. You know it. And we did talk briefly on Monday about a man who had allegedly been captured on video at Tommy Robinson's Zionist rally in London on Saturday, threatening to assassinate Kier Starmer. He was arrested by the police. The footage included an interview where he said Kier Starmer needs to be assassinated and someone needs to shoot Kier Starmer. And a spokesperson for the Met said a man has been arrested in relation to a video referencing Sir Kier Starmer, which was filmed during the Unite the Kingdom protest on Saturday, the 13th of September in central London. And on Sunday, the 14th of September, police arrested a 56-year-old man on suspicion of malicious communications. He was taken into custody and later released on bail pending further inquiries. I see. One more story before we bring in our guests and get into a full-on discussion about Charlie Kirk and events. This, of course, if you are not aware, is the patsy prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, although never been a prime suspect, according to me, who has actually researched the story, but a prime suspect, according to German police and the Metropolitan Police and the legacy media. And Christian Bruckner was released from prison on Wednesday morning. He drove out of the prison in Hanover. He's never been charged in relation to Madeleine McCann, well, because they don't have the evidence that they've always claimed that they had. And Christian Bruckner is many things: a thoroughly reprehensible, disgusting rapist and child abuser. All those things are true. But he's a patsy. He didn't take Madeleine McCann. He is the number one suspect of lazy, incompetent and complicit police and journalists everywhere. And here he is. You can see he's got an ankle tag on and he's enjoying, looks like a burger to me. Looks like a burger to me. And Mark said he's a patsy. Not the first, certainly not the last. I was reading, Mark, by the way, that's interesting you say that. I was reading, Mark, that an Italian woman had come forward and said that she had new evidence. So I'm thinking, wait, so this is literally whipping around the world now. These authorities are now taking it in turns to see who can, have the claim to fame to do with Madeleine McCann. Because let's be very clear here, and that is the moment, like Hans Wolters, who is the German prosecutor who leapt on this whole idea that Christian Bruckner was responsible for Madeleine McCann. And he's had his 15 minutes of fame. And so they're kind of taking it in turns around the world. They're whipping around. But I think that we need to hold responsible the British police, Metropolitan Police, all the prime ministers from Tony Blair onwards, all the home secretaries from, I think, Jackie Smith onwards. They are all complicit in this lie. They have cost us, the British taxpayers, in excess of £14 million for a crime that not only did not happen in this country, but for a crime that is absolutely leading everybody astray. Sadly, poor little Madeleine almost certainly never left the holiday apartment 5A alive. And the reality is that the British investigation, Operation Grange, is absolutely complicit in what is taking place. They have refused to investigate the so-called Tapas 9, which is shocking because, as most people will tell you who knows anything about the disappearance of children, when children go missing, the vast majority of time it is people either associated with the child or known to the parents. And yet the 9 people 6 of them doctors who were around Madeleine when she went missing were not subject to investigation by the British police investigation, which is absolutely outrageous. It's almost like they didn't want to find those kind of answers, right? Right. Shug said it was a cover-up project from the start. You've got no argument from me, Shug. Both my guests are here. I'm going to bring them in. And I think this is going to be very interesting indeed. Let's do this, right? Here's Johnny McNeil. Good morning, Johnny. Lovely to see you. And Francis O'Neill. I noted this morning that you're both Neils, which is interesting. And lovely to have you both with us. Johnny McNeil, you are a former military man. You have written extensively about this and other things. You're a regular guest on Wake Up. And Francis, you're an activist, you're a writer. And both of you are very aware and alert to the various machinations that go on in this world. You're absolutely ideal to have this conversation with. It is, of course, about Charlie Kirk. So let me just first of all start off by saying thank you both for being here. I think this is going to be a very enlightening conversation, and let's get into it. So Charlie Kirk, of course, we were told was shot and killed at a college event on Wednesday, September the 10th, 2025. So that was last Wednesday. He was the co-founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative organization, and a man recognized as winning the youth vote for Donald Trump. Since his demise, the Turning Point USA have seen a huge swell of support. They have calculated they've had at least 54,000 people have requested to join or start chapters in the last week alone. And the group Turning Point said that Kirk's vision is alive and stronger than ever, and that this is just the beginning. Kind of weird at the end of somebody's life who founded that organization. But there you go. This Sunday, Kirk will be honored at a public funeral service. And this will take place in Glendale, Arizona. It's expected to draw thousands. It will be beamed around the world. High-profile political figures such as President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are said to be in attendance. Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, will speak at the event alongside members of Trump's cabinet. So it will be a big international affair. Let's do this. Right. The man that they say is responsible for killing Charlie Kirk is Tyler Robinson. He appeared in court this week. So before we go any further, let's play a little bit of that video and give people a sense of what we're dealing with.
Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances. The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than Charlie Kirk and the defendant. Notice conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or pursuant to Utah Code 76-3-207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 25 years, that may be for life.
And as you can see, he was almost in fact, that's obviously just a clip from it, but for the whole hearing, he was almost entirely still. It was quite surreal, actually, frankly. So let's go back to this day. I want to start with any of you, actually. Let's go to Johnny. Johnny, what were your initial, because you contacted me almost immediately. You wrote about it straight away. It galvanized you immediately. What were your initial thoughts when you saw Charlie Kirk gunned down last Wednesday?
Well, and thanks for having me back on, Sonia. And
pleasure.
Nice to meet you, Francis. There were a number of things that, stood out starkly, very much straight away. If I can just read a wee quote here. I know you like your quotes as well.
I love them.
There are things known and things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception, right? Aldous Huxley. That piece that I wrote, I put that out in the wee hours on last Saturday morning. And I was on an Australia-based online news show as well yesterday. So I managed to speak about it then as well. I am absolutely convinced, and I'll qualify this as we go through, with the evidence that we can all see. And one of the things we need to try and do is park ego and park our emotions, because I'm absolutely convinced that Charlie Kirk was a fully complicit part in a staged event that's gone very wrong. Basically, it's met Murphy's Law, Murphy's Law's intervened, and basically he's been killed as a result.
So you're in no doubt that Charlie Kirk was killed on that day?
No doubt at all. Looking at the footage, no doubt at all. I think what we were witnessing, had it gone to plan, was him being maneuvered slowly but surely. And there's a number of props, propaganda props, which I'll go into, on the scene that day, because he was being maneuvered, I believe, to become the 48th and youngest ever president of the United States in 2028.
I mean, they all talk about it, don't they? They said that he was like destined to become president. It's like a given that they talk about. So that's interesting. Francis, tell me your thoughts. Do you believe that Charlie Kirk was killed on that day?
No.
Talk to me.
So I think we've got to look at this in a historical context and look at the plethora of events that we have seen over the years. There's people who have been watching these kind of things closely for a long time, such as myself. And after a while, you just become almost jaded. Listen to me, it's the same kind of script every time. And that we have these shocking and emotive events which are used to engineer our emotions so that we respond in a certain way, in a given way, in a prescribed way. And I think that if this event was real, for starters, it would not be shown to us. For example, if I was to show something brutal or disgusting on my Facebook or Twitter, it would come with an advisory warning and it would be covered within no time at all.
Yeah, this is everywhere.
Everywhere. And you come across it even when you're unsuspecting. So for most people who don't want to see people being shot as they're going about their everyday business, looking at the phone or whatever, they have that kind of emotional reaction, that kind of visceral reaction to this disgusting thing with the blood pouring out of his neck. And that's all they want to see. And they've seen it once and they'll never look at it again. They'll never study the fact that his T-shirt jumps up or his wife makes a very strange statement afterwards. And people don't look at it in depth. They don't have time to. So they just take what is presented to them and then react in the way that's been preordained by the authorities so that they can corral us into whatever situation they want to take us to. I think it's also very important that a point I should get in is that they didn't close off the crime scene. The police were present, but they took down the whole tent, they took down the marquee, whatever he was in, and they tidied it all up, whereas that should have been sealed and examined if it was a murder. And I think that is a bit of a major clue to the fact that what we're seeing there is not a crime because it's not been investigated like a crime.
And I think this is great because you two have enough of a difference between you that will give us as full and decent a conversation as we need. But I think what joins both of you is that you are both of the understanding that this is staged. I think that is that accurate to say that's what you both think? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, right. So I think there have been so many interesting events, and I would like both of your analysis on this. Francis, of course, you've written a series about this very thing, about actors and false flags and psyops. And Johnny, with your military experience and your understanding about these things, I think between you come with a wealth of understanding about this situation. So I want to just get your take on this man and the FBI conference, Kash Patel. So it started with the governor. Francis, you're already smiling because you know how ridiculous it is, right? The Governor Cox, the first thing he said after welcoming everybody was, we got him. So they've done away with any due process immediately. So it all feels very much like some sort of spaghetti Western movie we're watching. But let me just briefly bring in a bit of Kash Patel and I want both of your thoughts on this man and his role in this.
Governor, this is what happens when you let good cops be cops.
Oh.
The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk and honor his memory. I want to express my deep gratitude to President Trump the Vice President, and the entire White House who have been so incredibly supportive with both resources and just personally to the FBI as a team. They had our backs the entire way, and I just want to express my gratitude for giving us the resources we need to operate in this space to bring this sort of justice at this sort of speed.
I'm not going to play it in its entirety because actually, frankly, it just makes me want to heave. He's a ridiculous human being these days. Johnny, I presume you've seen that press conference. What were your thoughts about it?
Well, I mean, they've lost control of the entire construct. And I can pinpoint a date on that, 25th of June, 2017, via Berlin. Now, this specific element, they've lost control. And so what I think part of that, speech, if you like, and that address was essentially to, begin to confuse, to begin to distract. And that's why I think we're getting a lot of this on social media, certainly via Twitter. You're getting a lot of the kind of raw footage and more being bombarded on Twitter. And I think what they're trying to do in the initial context is throw so many different theories out there that the general public, not us who are, activists and involved and want to get to the truth of these things, but the general public become apathetic. And so that they're more inclined to buy whatever transpires to be the official narrative, which is obviously being tied to this Tyler Robinson character. So yeah, more distraction. And it's likely that speech will be forgotten about by, the majority of people in the coming months.
It was a funny speech, Francis, because he spent the majority of it bigging himself up and his partnerships with the various cops who were involved. And there seems to be a running theme here. We'll talk about Erica Kirk shortly. She did very similar things. She was sending her thanks to everybody. These speeches sound increasingly like award ceremony speeches. What were your thoughts about the role of Kash Patel?
Well, I would look at it in the context of something that many of your viewers might agree upon. I'd look at it in terms of the lockdown and the vaccination situation, where they used to put officials up in front of us to say all kinds of baloney about these impositions and medical procedures. And sometimes it was all along the same lines all over the world. They'd be talking about building back better in terms of lockdown. They'd be talking about safe and effective. There'd be certain numbers that they'd leave out for us to look at. And when you listen to these people, I think what we can take from the past 5 years, and particularly that lockdown and vaccination situation, is that you can look at it and see that they are able to coordinate events over the world on a massive scale and have people all sing from the same hymn sheet, whether it's Tony Blair to Instagram influencers. They're all saying similar things, and all different politicians saying all over the world saying similar things. So the idea that this event is suddenly gone out of control, or that this man is standing in front of there and doesn't have a script or doesn't know what to say to people, doesn't wash really. It's you have to look at it in a context. If you can accept the control, the extent of the control that we have witnessed over the past 5 years, and then think that somehow the FBI director can get up and just be a buffoon in front of us and not know when the man's arrested or not. It's part of the confusion and the whole sort of flooding the zone with nonsense so that people can argue and query things, but it also disguises the actual fact, which is, I don't think this event is real. I think it's a farce.
Johnny, that's interesting. What Francis is saying there is that what we're looking at is not incompetence. It is very much scripted and designed that way. But you were talking about how they'd lost control. How does that fit in with, or doesn't it, with what Francis has just said?
Well, yeah, I mean, I utterly believe that they have lost control of this specific, overall, and this specific, this specific event. And by reference, I mean, it comes back to Karl Rove and his reference to the empire of actors, of which, Patel is yet another. And essentially, authority figures straight away have this kind of, this power over us. And by aligning themselves with other authority figures or people in the public eye, lends credence to, what it is they're saying in their own speeches, etc. But I mean, that can only last so long. before it crumbles even further.
I want to ask you this as a former military man of several decades, actually, and that is many people, or some people have said to me, if you look more closely, he was shot from behind. He wasn't shot from in front. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, you can see just from the slowed down footage anyway, him propel backwards, so it hits the chest plate and it rises up from in the chest plate up into his neck. Obviously, you can't see the round itself, but you can see from the momentum of the t-shirt, the body armor being kind of thrust backward. And then himself being thrust backward, where it enters his neck, into the carotid artery.
Francis, so am I right in thinking that you believe that Charlie Kirk, or whoever he is still alive?
Yeah.
So all of that was faked. The shot, the rushing him away, everything, all staged, and he's complicit in it.
Yes, absolutely. I think that there may be some people now that the emotions have subsided, who'll be able to look back at the Donald Trump shooting and recognize that someone who has a round go through his ear and his doctors are saying it's an inch or two wide, and then 10 days later we see a perfectly formed ear with no injuries present on it. I think they'll recognize that was now a faked event. And I think similarly, once the shock of the initial visuals of Charlie Kirk being shot allegedly subside, people will look at this in the same way and see how it sits on a trajectory of political manipulation. I think when you actually what we actually saw there, if you slow down the footage, is his t-shirt jump first in line with a special effects squib, and you can even see signals being given beforehand. There's a hint of a wire behind him, and what if we're watching, say, a military movie like Saving Private Ryan, and the people die in front of us, and there's people getting shot in the face and the neck, it's horrific. And that first opening sequence of that film is horrific and jolts people, and it looks very, very real. There's people getting out of amphibious craft and so on, but none of it is real. But they still have to make it look real when they film it. So these people are capable of amazing special effects. There are prosthetics that they can put on through which they can pump the blood. And when you watch a movie, it looks like the person's getting shot. And I think that's just exactly what we're watching. I think people don't understand the extent to which the screen reality is faked. It's faked every which way. And we've seen it through a series of events over the past few years. And also the US government even changed its legislation with the Smith-Mundt Act. It amended it so that it could propagandize its own people, which means it's capable of actively deceiving its domestic population, whereas previously it was only, and this happened in 2012, I think, but it was previously only capable of propagandizing foreign subjects. So if you put it in that context, there's no legal recompense if they lie to you about these things.
Right.
Sorry,
go on, Johnny. Go for it.
A wee point now. So the crucial context, that's the kind of background to this, and the Trump assassination attempt is a crucial part of that as well. So what I see is a failing coup that was supposed to be militarized. So Brexit and Trump were never, a coincidence. 2016. I think this was initially supposed to be militarized by blaming Iran in 2017. We kind of got a bit of reality to that, and the intent to militarize a hard Brexit with Operation Yellowhammer, which the entire media, other than at the time, to normalize the prospect of militarization as if that was a normal thing to do, and the alternate left media as well, who you would expect to drill this into their followers, and into the mass consciousness. They still haven't done that. More context is their failure to get NATO into a war with Russia via Ukraine, and their genocide, so the joint US, UK, EU and Israeli genocide in Gaza. There are a lot of them going to prison or worse when this all crashes, when it all comes down. Now, the faked, we can agree on that, the faked Trump assassination attempt is the reason why, a part of the reason why this staged event had to be so real, right? In the Trump one, Francis is absolutely right, had that round struck his ear, it would have ripped his ear, it would have made a proper cauliflower job of it. It would have spun him. The momentum of the round hitting him. And you had the pre-positioned stars and stripes, at the top or just above them, like an aerial view, as it were. And the photographers, there was footage of photographers being wheeled into position by a staffer in order to get the fist pumping defiant Trump, for that propaganda shot, entirely staged. And this is the reason why I'm convinced, with the props that were on display as well on the day, that this staged attempt had to be more convincing. A little bit more context, which is slightly related. For centuries, for millennia, people have been, for entertainment alone, just for entertainment, right? People have been throwing knives and axes at an assistant, shooting arrows at apples off people's heads. You could probably get that on Britain's Got Talent on a Saturday night. You can YouTube footage of people testing the protective properties of body armor, being stood in it whilst a rifle is fired into that body armor. So I think that a combination of complacency and and I think Charlie Kirk was to some extent power drunk, and also seeing his historic place on the horizon to be ushered into the White House simply got the better of him. And as I say, Murphy's Law, again, we can come into that for a number of reasons. The shot was misplaced for whatever reason. And that's so the Trump point there, absolutely valid, absolutely faked. This is why this one had to be beyond suspicion.
I take that. Francis, do you want to respond to that in any way? I don't know whether you did. Was there something there that you picked up?
Well, there's just a few things around the actual incident itself. It's just like the Charlie Kirk was then allegedly filmed being carried to like a vehicle, and there's no ambulance present at the scene, which presumably you'd have an ambulance for a large scale event where maybe just for insurance purposes for the university they would require one. There's just what we do is accept what we see on the screen as reality, and I demand evidence for it. Like, I don't think we've been shown evidence. We've been shown film footage, which could be quite easily faked, and without solid evidence, we just left at the mercy of the people who manipulate our emotions. We've seen, as I say, over years, we've seen faked, as I say, with the COVID thing, faked deaths and mannequins on screen, and I think we've seen mannequins on screen again recently.
Interesting. And I agree with both you in terms of our emotions have absolutely been manipulated. When I first saw that video, which was on last Wednesday when it happened, and it caught me unawares, it was on YouTube, which actually shocked me because I wasn't expecting it to be on YouTube, right? You know what they can be like. And it caught me unawares because I thought it was just a news story about it. And I opened it up and the first thing I saw was that, and I felt traumatized. I struggled to sleep that night. And I think that's obviously echoed all around the world. And of course, that's also been featured very heavily in terms of his wife, Erica Kirk. And Erica Kirk has come over as somebody who's extremely odd, to say the least. She's done things like, for example, this. So posing by the coffin, I, as I said on Monday's show, if that is a trend, I don't want to be part of it, right? Posing by somebody's coffin. Very staged, highly staged. And then she, of course, gave this speech. This is just a clip from it. I showed more on Monday. It's available online. But she smiles a lot. Now, I appreciate she's a former beauty queen, but nonetheless, given that she made this speech only 2 days after apparently her husband had been assassinated, I struggle with some of it. And this is one of the parts where I struggle with the most.
My heart is with every one of my husband's employees who lost a friend and a mentor. I want to thank the staffers of his amazing Charlie Kirk show who helped him broadcast from this studio, this chair. Every day he loved it. He loved what he did.
Now that is theatrical, and I had an interesting response after Monday's show. Vast majority said, I completely agree with you, something's off about that. And then you get one or two who are like, you shouldn't be criticizing a widow. It's wrong. And it's like, I'm a journalist. My job is to analyze as much evidence as humanly possible. And although everybody responds differently to grief, I've never actually seen anybody laugh like that. And she was clearly laughing. Francis, what's your takeaway from watching Erica Kirk so far?
Well, she's an actress. I think that I'm saying this quite bluntly today because for some of us, it's almost tiresome. Every time one of these events comes around to manipulate us, everybody's full invested emotionally. Instead of taking a step back and with circumspection thinking, what am I being shown here? How many people, how many widows do I know who've just been bereaved? First of all, film themselves next to a casket with their husband in it. But actually, she didn't film herself. Someone else was filming her while she's gone and taken the footage and uploaded it herself to her own Instagram. Like, and this is a woman who ostensibly is quite private. They hide the faces of her children. The children's names aren't really known. So then suddenly to be full on Instagram friendly with one of the most personal and painful moments of your life just doesn't make sense. And then to think, I'm going to make a 20-minute speech about turning point when it might be the furthest thing from your mind. So let's say you would allow her a little bit of slack and she makes the speech because he's a public facing figure. But then the smiles and the theatrics and it doesn't seem normal. And what you find is you mentioned there that you don't never seen a widow smile so much or something along those lines. I have. You see it all the time in these kind of events, in these mass shootings. If you go back, you're looking at Robbie Parker after the Sandy Hook. He's laughing his head off, and then he gets himself composed and gives his speech. You got Christine Leinonen after the Orlando shooting. There's all kinds of the Manchester Arena one. There's smirks all over the place when people have lost. I think it's Martin Hett, the mother of Martin Hett. You're looking at these people, and they all seem to have this unusual characteristic of finding the death of a loved one a jovial affair or able to smile through it. Now, we can make allowances. People will be saying it to the screen now, or well, they might be on antidepressants or some kind of drugs, or everyone reacts differently. But there is a certain norm. There is a certain norm because, there's people who've looked at maybe duping delight, and people will argue whether that's actually a thing or not. But to the extent that there is a known case where a mother killed her children, but you can see in her testimony, she's talking about very serious, her account of how these children were killed, which was later found to be untrue. And at the end of it, she openly grins in front of the interviewer. Now, we can say that is not normal, right? So there is a certain norm to which we can accept. So whether people argue whether duping delights is a proven characteristic, a human characteristic or not, we can say there are certain norms that are being broken in many of these, what we would consider false flag or mass shootings that are presented to us, or assassination attempts. People don't tend to laugh for a long time when they lose their beloved husband or their beloved child. That is not normal.
It is very odd, isn't it? Johnny, what did your instinct tell you?
An actress, and an awful one at that. And yes, feelings trump facts, right? We do allow our emotions to rule our reality, and our emotions and our egos to rule our reality. But what I would say is I'm fully aware of how, the effect of graphic footage can have on you to drive predictable emotional behavioral responses. That's the point, of a lot of these kind of false flags. Gaslight and Gilligan, the book itself, in there are many of the anomalies and inconsistencies, certainly in the early stages of reporting on the Westminster Bridge attack, a false flag, the Manchester Arena, which I covered in there as well, false flag attack. And also, like it or not, and believe it or not, Grenfell Tower fire, right? The Grenfell Tower fire. Because when we're emotionalized and we're automatically irrational, we don't think rationally. And it's easier to predict and control people if you've got them in an irrational state of mind.
I mean, it's really important for everybody to understand that I don't necessarily agree with everything that's being said on the screen, but that's not the point of this discussion today. The point of this discussion today is to air out what I'm hearing a lot that people are talking about. And this is very much an issue that my viewers have come to me and said something is desperately wrong about this. This is not as we're being told. And some believe it is absolutely staged and he's involved in it. Well, actually, I think both of you believe that he's involved in it, but one believes that it went wrong and one believes it didn't. Interesting. I like that distinction as well. I think that's interesting. It's also important, I think, for people to understand that Erica Kirk, as one example, like Charlie Kirk's own father, had involvement with Trump prior to that. So Erica Kirk, as one example, model, Miss Arizona, here she is posing up a storm for a Trump promotion. And in fact, Charlie Kirk's dad was one of the architects who was involved in building Trump Tower. So this goes back a long way with the Trumps as one example. So what I want to talk about now is the shooter, and I want both of your, or the alleged shooter, and I want both of your insights into this, because I think one of the things that people are like, this doesn't make sense, is the so-called text between him and his boyfriend. Okay. I love it when you both smile and it's like, yeah, you completely know what I'm saying here. Let's just bring in some imagery of Tyler Robinson. So this is Tyler Robinson. This is Tyler Robinson from the image of when he was apparently caught on campus. Does look different to me. And this was him when he apparently handed himself in a soft way, we were told, in a soft way. And the kind of chain of events was that his parents, his mother recognized it. She thought it might be him, told his father. They recalled having a conversation around the dinner table. They talked to him. The father wanted a picture of the gun. Tyler didn't send it. And then they persuaded Tyler to speak to a friend who was a pastor and a former law enforcement, and that was how they eventually apparently got to him going in, and then he refused to cooperate with them. So let's start. Francis, tell me some of your thoughts about Tyler Robinson.
I watched a documentary quite some time ago. It might have been Everything is a Rich Man's Trick, and in it he talks about the phenomenon of the lone gunman, and how all these high-profile events are always carried out by a lone gunman. And he gave some quotes and talks about how every time the public fall for it, every time there's some kind, and this is talked about being like JFK 2, and there's all kinds of kind of epithets being attached to this staged event. And again, we are being presented with the lone gunman who, a bit like the 9/11 hijackers who threw the passport out of the plane before they hit the towers. Right. We've now got him with a full confession, essentially, in an exchange of text messages whereby he explains all the anomalies about how he changed his clothes and left the gun assembled in the woods, and all these things that would have otherwise made no sense. He's explained them conveniently and just almost
it's complete,
dropped it in the lap.
Absolutely
dropped in the lap.
Complete. Yeah.
Dropped in the lap of the security services. So that's it. Case closed. Everyone can go back to sleep. I think it's ridiculous. I think they do it every single time, whether it's the Boston bombings, whether it's 7/7. They always have this state, or Salman Abedi at the Manchester Arena. They always have the grainy CCTV footage showing them in exactly the right clothes, at exactly the right place, at exactly the right time. Now, you could argue that's because they were there, but nothing else about this whole thing makes sense. And I think that this is just part of the theatrics. We have to be given a patsy. He was found within. It's interesting that these kind of little nuggets that they leave lying around. So, like the FBI found him within 33 hours, which is obviously a Freemasonic number. When we were looking at the video of Erica with the casket there, she's got the Freemasonic G, the ring on a finger. She's also, the other ring looks very much like the one eye to me, the one eye symbol. We were thrown these little Easter eggs or clues, or just to keep us interested, just to let us know that it's all a farce, and yet people are lapping it up as though it's all genuine and real, and without any questions whatsoever, and they'll believe what they're told.
Johnny, is this man a patsy?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the trail of breadcrumbs was being laid from the outset, you know. Again, you know, it's people like us that are interested in this, and you know, have the ability for critical thinking. But unfortunately, I think the majority of the population will just accept, you know, this guy as the official narrative, you know, as being, you know, the one. And part of the reason, you know, again, to flood social media with all these different theories, you know, is to make, you know, the majority apathetic and to accept the official narrative. But absolutely a patsy.
I think some of his history is quite interesting. So we were told that he went to Utah State University. Turns out he was only there for one semester. And what's interesting, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but at the Utah State University is the Center for Anticipatory Intelligence, which is linked to the CIA. So they have a program there at the actual university where Charlie Kirk was shot. And so I think that in itself is interesting. So both of you have seen him when he attended court. To me, he looked like some kind of MK Ultra victim. I mean, he seemed to be absolutely out of it. What did you think, Francis? You've really examined the way characters are.
Well, I think it's interesting that he didn't actually appear in court. He was on video link.
Yes, that's right.
Which is something that they seem to be introducing in these cases, because we also had the similar thing with Lucy Connolly. They weren't actually there. So for all we know,
right.
He's an image on a screen. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how far to push this, but as a questioning person, then I've got to ask, like, well, why is he not really in court? And if he's on video link, does that mean he just only exists in a video world, or is he actually a real? Now we're going to take it that he's a real person, like we take it that Lucy Connolly's real. But there's something odd, and I don't know why they're introducing this this process where people only are appearing in high-profile cases or appearing through video link. I just want to pick up as well, because you mentioned Utah University there. There's a lady called, I wrote her name down, Dr. Astrid S. Tumenes. And sometimes people say to us, like, oh, when you say who's doing these things, who are they? And if you look back through the chain of command, you'll find yourself, like, you might find your way back to things like the Council for Foreign Relations or the Milner Group and so on. Well, this lady is part of the Council for Foreign Relations, and she's the president of Utah University.
Interesting.
And another thing that I saw, which I thought was quite interesting, is that there's a report. Now, I've not had time to check it because I saw it this morning before I came on, but that he's associated with an organization called Queers, Guns and Socialists, which has an echo of a Saturday Night Live skit, which was Gays, Communists, Gun Club.
Wow.
So a lot of these, sometimes I think they're just, we obviously know there's a thing of predictive programming, that they do put narratives into their movies and soap operas and stuff to guide our perceptions, or to prepare the groundwork so that we accept certain things as true without question, or even just for some kind of fun and mockery. But it's quite interesting that we have this comedic allusion to something that we are now being told is real. And I just want to say one last point here about what I think what we're seeing here is a political move, because these mass shootings, which I think are mostly, if not all, engineered to encourage Americans to accept gun restrictions. This particular one is being used to encourage the right. This is one aspect of it, to be used to encourage the right to think in favor of gun restrictions, because it's now their heroes that are becoming under attack. And so now we've got this bizarre situation where you've got a left-leaning gay socialist shooting a right-leaning, totemic figure, so that the almost like the roles have been reversed.
Yeah,
in this weird left-right paradigm.
It is weird, isn't it? I mean, both of you have talked about how complete this all is. And it is so complete, isn't it? Like, we know that Trump's administration is after that whole kind of trans issue and furries and everything. So we have that, don't we? The left is, he immediately came out and said that, and said who was responsible. And the text exchange is just so bizarre. It's so weird, as you've both said, that it just ties it up. I mean, even about, remember how I was engraving bullets? And I find that, Johnny, this is something I want you to kind of respond to for me, please. I find that there's altogether too much detail in this text message. I'm not being funny, but I don't know many 22-year-olds who text like this. I don't. Yeah. And that I found extraordinary. Johnny, pick it up for me.
It was absolutely, bizarre way to, for a young man to frame it You know, it was an older person, you know, a much older person, somebody of our generation, that would be writing that, trying to make out, you know, that there was a younger person that was writing. What I've been seeing, again, what's in Gaslight and Gilligan, is the super propaganda overload of the LGBT stuff we've been seeing all these years, plus these, you know, these recent specific LGBT or the trans lone wolf shooters, lone gunman shooters, probably have been leading into this, and of course they've stuck with the same, you know, LGBT narrative. But when it comes to the gun control aspect, and here's what I think was part of what was being set up. So he was shot, you know, we're told, by an LGBT gunman, right, or a trans gunman, gay gunman. Part of the staging process, part of the propaganda theme, I think the question itself that he was asked was a primer, right? Because it was about mass shootings.
Oh, yes.
Right?
And he said, including or not including gang violence. And that was when it happened.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was about how many transgender have been involved in these mass shootings.
Right. On when he says counting or not counting gang violence, right? In that moment, in that very moment, he puts his microphone hand down between his knees, and he's got his elbows, you know, splayed naturally either side of his waist. Perfectly reasonable sitting position. But here's what I want to. Now, I think he was supposed to be shot and survived. But there would have been a long drawn process, and he would have had this kind of messianic comeback. However, what he would have done would have stuck, characteristically been brave, this all-American hero, all right, this you know, presidential candidate, would have stayed loyal to his Second Amendment beliefs and gun freedom.
Right.
And I think that's where his T-shirt came in, because you would normally wear a dark T-shirt with the area of white one. Okay, you don't have to read too much into that, but the word freedom. So these propaganda themes were to converge. So you the LGBT aspect, what you just mentioned, but the specific gun question, of the specific, including the not counting and not counting gang violence, and the freedom T-shirt, he was to remain, I would say, characteristically loyal to that Second Amendment gun freedom belief, and push that even harder.
I've got you. And also I thought it was interesting, of course, that video that then emerged of him where he said, you know, I'm going to have to paraphrase him and badly, but where he was essentially saying it's worth it for people to be killed by gun violence in order for us to be able to retain our.
And can you imagine the kudos he would have having, you know,
having survived?
Yeah, the kudos he would have for coming out and say, yes, this happened to me. Someone tried to take my life, but I still believe in our Second Amendment rights.
Right. So whichever position we're working from, whether it's France's position or whether it's Johnny's position, let's have a look at who is potentially involved and who has been accused of being involved. Now, Netanyahu put out this extraordinary video yesterday, of which I'm going to play a small part of it. Very few people put out videos denying that they're involved in murder, but Netanyahu did. Let's have a little listen to this one.
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread. Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder. This is insane. It is false. It is outrageous. Charlie Kirk was a giant, a once-in-a-century talent who defended freedom, defended America, defended our common Judeo-Christian civilization.
Interesting. I keep hearing more and more now about this Judeo-Christian civilization. I heard it at the Reform conference, and they just keep repeating it now ad infinitum. So your thoughts, please, on Israel. And although I know kind of have an idea of it, so it could be either of you, whichever one of you want to pick it up.
Yeah, I think very much in the same way that, you know, we've always had this special relationship, you know, shoved down our necks, you know, between, you know, America and Britain. to give us this idea that we are, culturally close. It's the same kind of, agenda to try and make us believe that all Christians and, the Judean religion, we are all one and the same, fighting the same causes. It's all rubbish, of course, but trying to get us to, culturally and religiously identify with each other.
Francis, hypothetically speaking, of course, because we're making no allegations, what are the chances of Israel being involved in this?
Well, in answer to that, I was going to answer the other question, but in answer to that question, then I think that Israel, the United Kingdom, the United States, they're all working together. That we've seen this with the COVID thing. There's an international government that people don't accept, but we saw it manifest quite blatantly in 2020. So when we talk about Israel, it's almost like interchangeable with the United States, with the United Kingdom and the other governments. So if I'm about to talk about Israel now and to ward off the accusations of being anti-Semitic, I would accuse all the governments of great evils. Right. So this staged event. Now, Netanyahu, you remember when David Cameron was accused of having sex with a pig's head? Now, now what happened there was he never denied it. And that's the tactic that you use when you're smeared in the press and the media, is not to give it fuel. You do not give it fuel. Whereas for some reason, Netanyahu here has decided to answer the accusation that Israel is involved. And the only reason can be there that he wants to give it fuel. So that he wants to give that fuel because they want to clamp down on people like us questioning so that they can say it's anti-Semitic. So as fast as you like after this event, right, they've allowed, because there's been something for everybody. There's been something for people to argue about, whether the shooter was a patsy, whether it was this shooter, whether it's that shooter, whether it's Israel, whether it's the left, whether it's the right. There's been so much information flooding the zone that the people have taken up this argument that it's an Israeli attack, so that then they can shut down all questioning as anti-Semitic. They can bring in. Trump has already made moves to bring in anti-Semitic speech laws, like he's already cracking down on students and saying they'll be deported if they criticize Israel and so on. So that's one angle that they're using the repercussions of this event to further their agendas. And I think the other thing is that Netanyahu says that, which can pick up on. He says it's absolutely ridiculous. It's fanciful to say that Israel would be involved. Absolute nonsense. Let's say it was a genuine assassination, which is not. Israel has been involved in things since 1948, the King David Hotel, the Lavon affair. Right. They're involved in false flag attacks as the dancing Israelis in 9/11 who were there to document the event. The Mossad were there, the USS Liberty. So there's a number of false flag attacks attached to Israel. And again, I'm not making a distinction with Israel because there's a number of false flag attacks attached to the United States or the United Kingdom. I'm not picking on any because that's the only country where you face like kind of a backlash if you criticize it for some kind of prejudice, which I don't have.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree with much of that. He's made that statement. Netanyahu's made that statement to fuel, the speculation, to fuel the confusion as another distraction. Did Israel, did Israel do it? Did Mossad? No. The collective cartel, if you like, this Orwellian globalist cartel, they did it. Murphy's Law kicked in, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And I think this idea, that Israel did it because of Kirk's recent, over the last few months has been critical of Israel. Right. I think the whole, that in itself was part of the lead-in for what was going to become his, presidential run because a lot of Americans have become exasperated with Israel, seeing that, the tax dollars, fund a genocide. And so it was essentially part of the narrative to, maneuver him into the White House, after which it would just be business as usual with Israel.
So I think it's interesting because obviously there are very famous kind of Zionist mouthpieces online, including like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, for example. And this week they've taken over Charlie Kirk's show. And I'm not sure how that all fits in to proceedings. Francis, what do you think?
Well, it does two things. I think you mentioned the Judeo-Christian alliance, and so this is helping to form that for those people who are receptive to that alliance. So they'll see it's quite normal, and Ben Shapiro is supposedly coming into Turning Point and maybe taking the place. And I think also, if you look back to, I should have mentioned it before, but when Erica gave her speech to the camera, there's a couple of things that stood out for me, and one is the kind of she mentions the word battle cry. She says this is a battle cry, which again is not something you would necessarily want to encourage when your husband's just been shot dead. Yes. Maybe you want less murders and less battles, but she makes what she says is a battle cry, and she's entrenching herself and saying that we'll take this fight onwards, or words to that effect. So I think we're being encouraged to engage in a conflict between not only left and right, but also between Muslim and Christian. Okay, which is and they always keep that festering sore, like whether it's Northern Ireland, in this case it's Palestine, so that they can encourage that dynamic. And so that is what we're seeing here. So we're having the Christian martyr being supported and replaced by a Jewish guy. So that alliance is formed so that the American Christian Bible Belt will align itself with Israel to oppose the other force, so that we can be fractured and divided against that other line, that Judeo-Christian versus Muslim line.
That's quite a persuasive argument, given the information that is in front of us, I must admit.
One last thing would be, and the other side of it is, if you are, as we've just been saying, is like, if you're opposed now to Israel because you've been seeing what's been going on in the Middle East, and you're a Christian who's taken that viewpoint, you also have something to be suspicious of. Well, he was very quick. He's so quick into his chair. He's only been dead 48 hours, and there we go. We've got Ben Shapiro taking his place. So that's another fraction line. So you can actually break the Christian side up into those who support this Judeo alliance and those who do not.
I would agree. I mean, how could you disagree with any of that? I would agree with all that.
Makes sense.
But also to maintain, I mean, Turning Point has been another, just like it's, UK offshoot. And just like, Farage and UKIP and then Brexit Party, and they've all been establishment projects from the outset, moving us ever further towards, what we perceive as the right wing. And they need to maintain and sustain the momentum on that. And they need a big name in order to carry that forward. And Shapiro fits the bill.
What am I to make of the cast of characters, like, for example, Candace Owens, who has come out? This is my friend Charlie. She talks about how he gave her the job in the first place. And then people have come after her saying, you haven't talked to him for ages. What are you talking about? What are we to make of people like Candace Owens? Would they be aware? Are they out of it? Talk to me, Francis.
Well, I think it's quite clear to me that anybody who is given the prominence that people like Candace Owens are given are probably not genuine. I think these people are created characters. Like, I think Donald Trump is an actor. Well, he's clearly an actor because he's a recorded actor. He's been in Home Alone. He's been in all the movies. He's been in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Similarly, Elon Musk. These characters are seeded to us. I think another thing that we have to be aware of is the long-term nature of the project. They're not. People don't just appear overnight. They're seeded over generations, so that as a child you get used to seeing Donald Trump in Home Alone or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and by the time you're an adult, you have an affinity for him. Maybe you watched whatever that show was, You're Fired show, The Apprentice, or whatever. Yeah. So that you get that kind of affinity that you get when you become familiar with somebody. Similar with Elon Musk being in various movies. But I think Charlie Kirk is similar. He's been seeded over maybe a shorter period of time. But his character is a construct which now has been removed from the screen show that we've been shown. And so Candace Owens is another one, and she's married to I think it's George Farmer, whose dad I think is Michael Farmer, has got connections to Chatham House, which is another one of these institutions that you would point to when people ask you, like, who are they? Who are these controllers of the world? Who are these puppet masters? So there's nothing organic about these people that you see, even at the lower levels. Like as again, if you look back to what we actually know, what we can observe, what we can prove in terms of lockdowns, we saw the way that everybody from the lowest Instagram influencer was used and manipulated, and it's documented that they were paid to push certain agendas. the influence and the numbers of followers and the reach that people are given, like Elon Musk openly talks about Twitter having freedom of speech but not freedom of reach. If Candace Owen is a name that is familiar to us, that means she has been given freedom of reach for a reason, which makes her kind of dubious and suspect from the beginning. So all the characters are part of a play, and they're all playing their roles, and it just happens that Charlie Kirk's role has been written out of the script at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny, would you include in that people like Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes? Are they all kind of, do you think, part of the same script? They're all playing a role, whether, because the thing is, I think one of the questions, let me just say this, one of the questions that people say to me is, if it has been staged, that means that there's an awful lot of people who are keeping the silence on it. But it doesn't necessarily work like that, does it, Johnny? They can section it off, essentially.
Yeah, and what I think we're so busy looking at the right, or the alternate right, that they were once known at. I think that these actors are on the left as well. I think that the entire political spectrum, the entire Overton's window, is dominated by politicians, by activists of all sides, of all persuasions, and I think that, these divide and conquer playbooks have always been, for 2 millennia plus, since Rome, and the true power, I think, in the modern age came about with broadcast media. It was first rolled out on a mass scale in Nazi Germany in 1933 by Joseph Goebbels. And what was done to the German population via the Volksempfänger, the People's Receiver, continued. And it was replicated through, black and white television, through color television, and has been with us since forever. And we underestimate, and I wish people could begin to get their heads around this. We underestimate just how many actors there are in the political, the journalistic, and the so-called activist sphere. And if I can, it'll take me just a wee minute. I've read this quote on your show before, but I think it's so important. Okay, so it's by Karl Rove, and it feeds into what Francis was just saying there. And it was quoted to Ron Suskind, who stood by it after Karl Rove denied saying it, but he stood by it. People like you are still living in what we call the reality-based community. You believe solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality, but that's not the way the world works anymore. We're an empire now in which we act to create our own reality. And while you are studying that reality, we'll act again, creating new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to just study what we do. All right?
Sobering, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
The reality is that we're not seeing a reality. It's an unreality via the screen, and that is part of the problem. Go on, Francis.
So I think in our vocabulary, in our lexicon, no matter what your persuasion is and what your opinions on this current thing is, we all accept the phrase deep state now. People accept that there is a deep state, and they understand that phrase, and they understand it to mean that there is an aspect of government that acts behind the scenes with a degree of deception. So, and that the agenda to which they operate is kept hidden from the public. Now, what the problem is there is then when something occurs that is presented to us by the media or the government, people will then say, they will set limits to the level of deception that deep state is capable of. So effectively they're saying, oh, there is a deep state. It's just not that deep. It's more of a shallow state. They're not
that corrupt. They're not that problematic, right?
Because if they were going to do something, they would run it past me first,
right.
Which is ridiculous. And if you think about it, like people wear if you ride a motorbike, you put on a motorbike helmet and you put on your leathers and your protective clothing, you go out, and you don't get to choose when you get knocked off your bike, you don't think I'm not going to wear it today. Or when you leave your house, you don't leave your doors and windows open on a Tuesday because you choose that no one's going to burgle you that day. You don't get to set the limits of the bad things other people do. And the notion is ridiculous. So if we accept that there is a deep state and there are people manipulating us in certain ways and they're deceiving us, we don't set the limits of the deception. They do.
Right. Excellent point. Really excellent point. And our time is coming to a close, which is more's the pity, because clearly we need more time. But there are a couple more things that I want to run past both of you. And that is, you've both talked about agendas. You've both talked about what this is about. We've already seen a number of actions that are taking place. And that is, for one example, you've had Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who is actually tracking military people in the US who have may have criticized Charlie Kirk and threatening their jobs. That's one example. Then they've been saying that anybody from overseas who have been making jokes about it or making light about it online will be barred from entering the US. That seems phenomenal. Back here in the UK, so the UK is not exempt from this nonsense. You've had the incoming president of Oxford Union, who once debated with Charlie Kirk, and he came out and he said these are ugly things. If a man has died, absolutely. But that now he's facing disciplinary proceedings. So clearly, censorship and free speech seems to be at the heart of this, but there has to be more. And Jimmy Kimmel is another example, a horrible, egregious individual who wanted all manner of terrible things done to us during C-19, no doubt about it. But what he had to say was actually really light. He just said that, about the shooter aligning more with the right than the left, and he got pulled off air for that. So, Johnny, agendas, ultimately, where is this leading to? Is this just part of it? Are we on to a next stage? What's going on?
One word, and I'll say it 3 times: agitate, agitate, agitate. Right? It's to stir us all up, to keep us all stirred, to keep us at each other's throats at street level, whilst they sit back, and watch on the TV, eating their popcorn and taking the cocaine and all the things that they do. And essentially to be able to justify, to legitimately ride to the rescue with military force, put us back down, and therefore, and establish their dictatorships. And Francis' point there about we don't set the limits of the deep state. They do. Absolutely. And this is why, when you think how far back Kirk's criticisms of Israel were going the past few months, probably 4 or 5 months, I think, I don't think it was a coincidence at all that Stephen Yaxley Lennon's, Tommy Robinson's march last Saturday was a coincidence, and neither is Trump's visit. A coincidence of with the timing of that, what was supposed to be an attempted assassination, but went wrong.
We have so many comments. I can't even necessarily cherry pick any here. Go on, Francis, go for it.
I think I really want to answer your question there about the repercussions of the event. So we've talked about like the First Amendment rights we talked about the Second Amendment rights of the gun control, but they're also trying to attack the First Amendment rights. So if you've got a right-leaning martyr and the passions of the right are inflamed, and you have people like Jimmy Kimmel getting sacked, and Trump saying we need to shut down people who are not in keeping with US foreign policy in our borders, he's basically attacking the free speech of people, and whilst he has the right-wing support to do it. So if they can bring in, there's a push to limit what people can say, and if they can bring in restrictions on free speech with the endorsement of the right, then it can be used against people in the future, like you or I, or when we question or speak out against other agendas down the line. But they have to do it while people's emotions are inflamed and they have that public support, and they can target people who might say like outrageous things. And it's also they're trying to bring in that divide against immigrants, because they're suggesting that it's foreign people who are saying these things. And I think also the link that we just had there between the UK and the US, that they're merging these agendas a little bit. Even Charlie Kirk, he was on GB News endorsing the Lucy Connolly story.
True.
And you've also had JD Vance talking about Lucy Connolly, and you had Turner on his airplane talking to Bev Turner on GB News about the Lucy Connolly story. They're merging these things, and they're trying to push towards So on the one hand, you've got Trump. It's really ironic, pushing for free speech, and JD Vance talking about free speech problems in the UK, and they're shutting down free speech in the US. And they're also trying to bring in, I think, harsher punishments for such transgressions. So like Trump was advocating the death penalty for this alleged murder.
Oh, they're definitely going for it. That's the yes.
And I think that might link to a slight push for it in the UK, because all these sort of stories that are being merged and created into a mush into the public's mind in both in the UK and US.
Right.
And if I can just follow on from that merger, that merging US-UK aspect, Operation Yellowhammer, which was inadvertently revealed in 2018, is basically forecasting it doesn't say directly militarization of UK for hard Brexit, but as I say, Trump and Brexit are not a coincidence. We're not a coincidence in 2016.
Right.
There are simply not enough British troops, certainly British Army, certainly across the three services, to initiate a deployment to control the UK population. Nowhere near it. Never mind sustain one. They will need US backing. And this is why we're getting these constant, special relationship type messaging. And you've got you've got the monarchy, you've got Starmer with Trump, the US UK flags together, because they need external US backing in order to be able for essentially to formalize Airstrip 1, Orwell's Airstrip 1.
I mean, obviously, this Sunday going to be the funeral. It's going to be a huge, massive event, isn't it? How can people protect themselves from what we're being hit with, essentially? Because I'm still, whether it's true or false, I'm still not recovered from what I saw regarding Charlie Kirk and that shot. And that does impact people. Both of you are absolutely aware of the psychology of humans and how we get impacted and how the great emotional situations are manipulating us. So in terms of like Sunday, any idea, one, what we should expect, and two, how we should perhaps approach it? Francis?
I think we can expect mawkish sentimentality and a call for like a direction towards what we've seen already, like the battle cry for entrenched positions and we'll never give up against the left, and all these kind of things. But I think that what we're facing is trauma-based mind control is the term. So we see a trauma and then they use it to control our minds. And I think that the way to protect yourself from that is to switch it off.
Yes. I mean, I couldn't agree more, really. Johnny, piece of advice.
He'll be given what was supposed to happen anyway, like this kind of Messiah-like status, in order to try and claim that, as religion does, try and claim that moral authority, and essentially, continue with the same theatre. And the reason, I will eat my words. And I will, just relent if he pops out of that coffin and goes, surprise.
Oh, don't say things like that. I mean,
it's the idea that they're going to, eulogize him in such a way that they're about to do, was how he was supposed to be treated and ushered into the White House itself.
Right. Francis, I want you both to have a final word on this. Anything that you feel that you wanted to say, haven't yet been able to articulate. Francis, go.
Not really. I just think that I'll just reiterate what I said, is that these events are regularly punctuate our lifetimes, and they are trauma-based mind control. They're meant to provoke a reaction, and they come along just as that reaction is required. So they're obviously trying to foment some kind of civil unrest both in the UK and the US. They're obviously trying to pit right against left. They're trying to pit the Christian world against the Muslim world, indigenous population against immigrants. They're looking for a flashpoint. It's all part of the same trajectory that Donald Trump encouraged when he said fight, 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 that Erica Kirk is talking about when she talks about a battle cry. It's all ushering us into a certain place so that we have more explosive actions, so that they can take more draconian restrictions, which we're seeing in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk, where they're trying to limit free speech. They're trying to encourage strict penalties for anybody who speaks out or acts out, and we have to be aware of the end goal and the motivations of these players, and recognize what we are being shown on the screen is not reality. It is no more real than a movie or a soap opera, and the characters on it are full-time actors, just in the way as so many of us recognized that we were being inundated with lies and liars through the COVID and lockdown and vaccination scams.
And 9/11 and you name it, right?
Exactly.
On and on. Thank you so much. Johnny, final word.
Yeah, if the kind of Aldous Huxley doors of perception aspect, I think what we've got in this incident, in this Charlie Kirk incident, it's failed. And if people accept my explanation, by the way, he involuntarily closes his eyes and tightens his lips. I believe, and I put a screenshot of that up in my blog, because I believe he knows he's about to take an impact. And so if people can, see how I see it, and what was to materialize out of that, being given this kind of, messianic status, to usher him into the White House, then what that is, that's the key to the door. That is, and obviously a better understanding of the theatre that takes place right in front of us. And if I can also ask on a personal level, Sonia, if my perception does get any traction, because I'm prohibitively suppressed, if it does get any traction and you notice any, and I imagine it'll be a left-leaning or so-called neutral gatekeeper, kind of hijacks what it is that I'm saying here. I'll obviously, if I see it, I'll let you know. And if I could ask for your support on, because all too often there are things that I'll come up with, and then I'll notice the gatekeepers left and right starting to take key words from that and then pass it off in order to basically draw traffic away from Gaslight Gilligan.
Got you. I got you. Listen, thank you both so much for taking part in this. Really enjoyed this. Been very enlightening. And I really enjoy the distinction that you both have on this. And that is, you both believe it to be staged. One believes that Charlie Kirk was murdered that day. The other doesn't. And I think that has made for a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much. Loads of comments, of which I'll be reading when I let you go any second. Everybody, this is Johnny McNeil, aka Gaslighting Gilligan, and this is also Francis O'Neill, two Neils, and that isn't a coincidence. No, it isn't.
Thanks very much, Sonia.
Take good care of yourself. Francis, you look like you wanted to say something there. Go on.
It was a coincidence.
Yes, sorry, that's exactly what I meant. It was a coincidence, because it then sounded like it was manipulated into place. Thank you for correcting that for me. You see, take good care of yourself, Francis and Johnny. Lovely to have you both. Wonderful to have you both. It was absolutely coincidence, people. I don't even know what I just said there. Take good care of yourself. Wonderful. Wonderful to have you both. Very enlightening, as I knew they both would be. Right, let's have a look. Aurora says there is free speech and then there are ethics. Is it correct to mock a murder? What does that say about character and morals? Aurora, I think it's horrendous, right? I think it's actually horrendous that even whether it's true or false, the fact is that it's presented as truth, and people who believe it to be true have mocked it. Yeah, I think it's horrendous, but I don't. I believe that there is real sheer hypocrisy. Listen, we've been told by people like Trump and Vance and Kemi Badenoch and all of them that being offended is not a reason to have hate speech laws, but suddenly hate speech laws are all the go for these people. So it's the hypocrisy that I don't like. Melvin says the reality is shaped and space, as they say it is 100% fake. Look what Hollywood have done to people. Indeed, LB thinks it's about depopulation. interesting. Shug says they create discord in ever decreasing circles. They will put religion versus religion, but then create discord within those groups, which bears more smaller groups in disarray. This is absolutely true. And so over the last couple of weeks, we have just heard repeatedly this whole idea that we are a Judeo-Christian country. That has never been on the table before. It's always been that England is a Christian country, but suddenly we are Judeo-Christian. Netanyahu used it yesterday in his denial of murder speech. So it's clearly on the table. And can I just say thank you to Simon, Bex and Marco for your super chats, your stickers. I greatly appreciate it. You people are stars. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's also very interesting things that to come from it. Do you remember we talked, I think it might have been on last Friday, about George Zinn. Remember, George Zinn was like the 71-year-old activist who had been some kind of distraction decoy, had claimed to have done it. Well, he's now been charged. Are we aware that he has now been charged? And he was arrested on charges of obstruction and found to have images of child abuse, child sexual exploitation on his mobile phone. What are the chances? And they said that he has been charged with 1 count of obstruction of justice and 4 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. That's so odd, isn't it, George Zinn? That's just so odd. But I am deeply concerned about the ramifications of this. And as I say, even Jimmy Kimmel, who I think is horrible and completely unfunny and wanted us all locked down, there's no reason why they should have cancelled his show. And the other new character that I think that they're positioning into place is this guy, Benny, what is his name? Benny, but he's a big, strong, have I got it here? Benny Johnson. I think they're angling him in to be the next Charlie Kirk. And I think it's very interesting. I think the whole thing is interesting. And I very much enjoyed that discussion with Francis and Johnny. Didn't see it. No, weird. Many thanks. You're very, very welcome. The backup Patsy. Indeed that, Trevor. Remember what he said about the unvaccinated? I do, Martina. Absolutely horrible and ridiculous. And I still don't believe in cancel culture. I don't. I think because we can see where it will go, right? They'll start on people who say these egregious things to these very emotive happenings. And they're horrible, truly horrible. There are horrible people in this world. But by their own metric, by the metric of these lawmakers, we shouldn't be punishing offensive words. Thank you, Randy. And N.T. Freud said Charlie Kirk could not become president of the USA in 2028. He's too young. 2028 or not, they definitely were angling him to be the president. It's been repeated, like all the stuff that I've looked into him over the last week. So I wasn't a great follower of him. Obviously, I was aware of him. I was aware of some of the stuff he said. But yeah, they were definitely saying that he was just kind of made to do it. And Fred, I agree with you. Losing your job for a comment is stupid. Baz thinks Francis and Johnny should team up. Right. Everyone will laugh at others being cancelled until it is themselves. And Daddy Mulk, that is it. Know thy enemy, says Maria. Indeed. I want to talk about the update in the Macron's versus Candace Owens lawsuit. This is getting really interesting. Very interesting. Now, I have no idea really what is true and what is not these days. It's difficult to tell, isn't it? Let's just bring in some imagery, if I may. Excuse me. I very much enjoyed what the guys had to say today. That was interesting. Right. Let me have a look. Let me see if I can just find some imagery. I'm sure I had some. Maybe I can't find it. Oh, sorry, people. Well, anyway, you know who I'm talking about, right? I am talking about, obviously, Candace Owens, the American podcaster, and Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron. And they are, oops, is this it here? Maybe it's not. Oh, there we go. Macron's, there we go. Right. And so what's happened, obviously, is the Macron sued Candace Owens, and they sued her for claiming a number of things, including that Brigitte has been operating under a false identity, claiming to be a woman when she is in fact her brother. There are also, she said a number of things, including that there involves incest and state corruption, all these different things. And so what has happened this week is there has been movement from both sides, and it's interesting movement. So what you have is, let me just straighten that up a little bit. So you have, for example, the Macrons and Brigitte now saying that they are planning to present photographic and scientific evidence in the court case. Their lawyer says that they will present the documentation in this defamation suit, and after she promoted the belief that Brigitte was born male. Now, what's really weird is Candace has taken to X and is making videos about it, claiming she's not being sued for this, but she is. It's weird. Why would she deny what she's being actually sued for? So that's kind of odd. She's been doubling down on this for since the beginning. As I said at the start of the show, if this is really legit, if this is a really legit lawsuit, I do not recommend the way that she has taken this. Now, it could well be that she's absolutely determined to fight fire with fire, which I can understand as a journalist. I get that. I really do. But the judge is likely to crack down on her really, really hard because of the way that she's taken this lawsuit thus far. And that is, she's doubled down. She has continued the campaign of harassment that they've already set out in their claim. She has continued to promote the libel as they set out in their claim. None of this, of course, has been proven yet in a court of law, which the Macrons, incidentally, are demanding that is a jury trial. And so the Macrons are saying that the whole thing has been incredibly upsetting, and they were a distraction to the French president when he's been trying to do his work, and it's not been good. And they had to take action about it. They said that they tried to reason with her. They tried to get her to retract. She refused. And so what has happened is Candace's team have now fired back with their response to the lawsuit. And they've done what I thought they would do. And that is they're attempting to get it dismissed on technicalities. Now, so it's interesting when people try and get lawsuits dismissed on technicalities, because it actually suggests that the lawsuit on its own is problematic for them. And I think that this lawsuit is problematic for Candace for a number of reasons, not least the way she's been acting since she's been given the lawsuit. The correct manner would really have been to have made a comment about it and then no more. But she has continued, obviously, to monetize and make a lot of money off of promoting what she's already being sued for. Now, the courts will take that very egregiously. They will see that as a real problem. And so she's filed to dismiss on technicalities, as I say, not over whether it's truth or not. And one of the issues that she said is that it was filed in Delaware. She doesn't live in Delaware. She doesn't work in Delaware. And none of that makes sense. Well, so they've already covered that in their original lawsuit, because they're saying that the reason that it was filed in Delaware, not France, incidentally, the reason that it's filed in Delaware is because that's where all her business interests are registered, which I think will probably be covered. Actually, if her business interests are registered there, then it will be covered. So that's one of the things that she's attempting to get it dismissed on. But essentially, they argue that Candace's team argues that the Macron's lawsuit is politically motivated. It's an attempt to suppress free speech and punish an American journalist for commentary, which is protected under the First Amendment. Now, she's right there. She's right there. And of course, the lawsuit stems from this 8-part series, which was aired between January and February this year, in which Candace Owens examined the Macrons' personal and private life, included their backgrounds, etc. And so her lawyers are saying that the Macron's lawsuit is not about legal redress, but rather about optics, what it looks like. And I'm going to quote directly: the French president and his wife cynically avoided filing their Franco-centric case in their home country. The reason is clear. The matter is not a legitimate legal action, but rather a transparent ruse orchestrated by plaintiffs' high-priced public relation firms. And as I say, Candace Owens is now seeking dismissal on a number of grounds, which is lack of jurisdiction, expiration of France's statute of limitations. She says that they should have, if they were going to take legal action, they should have done it sooner because that term has now expired. And there is also the legal doctrine of which discourages litigation in a jurisdiction that has little or no connection to the dispute. So rather a lot of it is based on her response is based on technicalities. So that's interesting. Her response states Miss Owens is not and has never been a Delaware resident. She does not have and has never owned real estate in Delaware, nor has she conducted business there. But their lawsuit clearly sets out that is where her business interests are registered. So I don't know what the positioning of that is. But Candace Owens has claimed that this lawsuit is part of a broader campaign to intimidate her and shut her down from reporting. And she wouldn't be the first person for that to happen to, and certainly not the first journalist. So we shall see. The idea that they are now saying that they will present evidence, scientific evidence. So you see, this can get problematic because in a situation like this, the most obvious thing is really quite invasive, right? The most obvious way to prove whether Owens is lying or not is an invasive approach. But they are saying that they are now prepared to put up this evidence, which will be presented in court. Now, that's going to be interesting because obviously Candace Owens' side are going to have a say in that as well, because Candace Owens' side are going to have to be careful that because they would be very concerned that there may be false evidence presented in order to be able to back up the Macron's claim. So I think that this is going to get very interesting indeed. But honestly, I really don't rate Candace's chances at this stage. But maybe they operate differently in America. Maybe in America, you can say all this outrageous stuff, keep doubling down, deny what the lawsuit is actually about. So she said that it's not true, that she's not being sued over that she is being sued over defamation, over these claims. So that is really weird. And of course, obviously, as I say, she's continued the claims. She's made merchandise based on these claims. They said that they sent her a retraction demand and that she not only ignored it, she then mocked it. That was in December last year. So, but in America, in order for them to win defamation, they have to prove actual malice and reckless disregard. Now, if they are telling the truth, and there's no reason to believe that they would actually lie, because this is all now in the public domain and in their documents. If they're telling the truth that they supplied her with evidence already long ago, before she even started the series, then that in itself can potentially prove malice and reckless disregard, because what it says is they gave her enough evidence, but she went ahead with the series, and that would be considered reckless disregard in terms of journalism. And there is also the issue of amplification of false claims. She's done the media rounds. She's been interviewed by a number of people, including Tucker Carlson. Well, they may also be drawn into it because she's repeating the claim there as well. I think it's very interesting. And what's even interesting is that the Macrons don't even state what specific sum of money they want. So that already tells me that they're looking essentially probably to bankrupt her, which will be quite hard because I think her husband, George Farmer, comes from a very wealthy British family and he is part of the lawsuit. So I think that's going to get very interesting. They say that they want relief. They want relief, presumed damages to be determined at trial. They seek punitive and exemplary damages due to the malicious nature of the defendant's actions, which she's continuing. That's the problem. The actions are continuing. But if she wins, it's a whole nother ballgame. It's a whole nother ballgame. Remember, she said she staked her professional reputation on this being the truth, that Brigitte Macron was in fact born male and is her brother, and it involves an incestuous family and deep state corruption. So a jury trial, as I say, has been demanded to address these claims, and we will see how that progresses. She's doing brilliantly for herself. I don't think anybody can deny that. She's getting millions and millions and millions of views, and but I don't know if I entirely agree with the idea that just because somebody is extremely popular that they have to be part of the game. I don't know if I agree with that, because there is also the thing of people power. People get behind her. People like gossip. She's a good gossip. She's a great gossip. She gossips well. People love gossip. So I'm not convinced that she is necessarily a state player or not. I think that a lot of her popularity is due to the fact that a lot of her information is very gossipy in detail, and people love that stuff. They love it. So there you go. Let's see how that develops. This is interesting, of course. So many messages from you all. I can't name you individually about what's been going on in the US administration this week to do with geoengineering. US Congress finally admitted they've been geoengineering us for at least 70 years, you think. They've gathered together 500 scientists around the world to call for a solo engineering non-use agreement. I was listening to a number of the people talking. Dr. Pielke Jr., he likened geoengineering to gain-of-function research on viruses with uncertain benefits and catastrophic risks. They talked about how these people have been using our planet as a test monkey and how it poses all sorts of risks. Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about the companies involved. She was involved in the debate. She talked very specifically about one company called Make Sunsets and read from their blurb, which was, unless we reflect sunlight, tens of millions of people will die and 20% of species may go extinct. At the committee, they talked about these kind of like godless climate cultists blocking the rays of the sun from hitting the earth. And this is what I personally captured yesterday.
Is very busy today.
Oh. Let me
The
just.
sky is very busy today.
Oh, why is that doing that? I'm going to play that. Let me bring that back in again. This sometimes happens on StreamYard. Unfortunately, it's a pain in the butt, but it happens. Let me just see what I've done with it. Sorry about that. Oh, there it is. Because it was quite a lot of spraying yesterday. So, and as I say, I believe this is a crime scene. Quite a mess. So yes, finally admitted it in Congress. And will it change anything? I mean, it may mean that your neighbors who thought you were an idiot for saying that geoengineering was real, that they finally catch up. It may mean that. Will it stop it? No, I don't think so. I don't think it will stop it at all. Which is more's the pity, because this is on the first occasion when they did the debate in the UK Parliament after we did the rally back in June. When they did the debate in the UK Parliament, they were talking about it upcoming. This is one of the first major debates I've actually heard about them talking about it, where it's been with us for so long. So I thought that was interesting. I see that as a change in the landscape. Where am I? Says your neighbours will pretend they always knew. Yeah, right. Laura misses the lockdown skies. They were very clean, weren't they, Laura? Right, Kath, they were spraying like a boss last night. Where do you live, love? Do things. Money makes all their plans reality, says Stanley. Most don't look up, says Ian. Where do you live, Kath? But I think they were spraying all over, right? You're lucky you got a bit of blue sky, says Cornish. Nature is a wonderful thing. 4 days of rain and the grass beautifully green. Absolutely. Essex. Got you. Has anyone else seen the continuous dust on windows and windscreens? Right, Aurora, I want to address that. Right. We've only had our new vehicle for like a month. So far, it has had to be thoroughly washed. Twice thoroughly washed and wiped down almost constantly. I've never seen so much crap on car windscreens, and I've been owning cars now for a quarter of a century. It's really bad. Yeah. Blue skies in Woolwich today, Vicky. Yes. Nice. They admit to weather manipulation, just not really reported on car. Yes, that's right. If I wake up feeling stuffy, I know what the skies will be like when I open the curtain, says John. Got you. Dust is everywhere, Shug. It's everywhere. It's thick. Got you. And Kath makes her own meds to detox. Sounds like a plan. Right. Thank you, as always, to our wonderful, wonderful donators. Where on earth would I be without you? You are all amazing. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Peter B. Thank you, Susan R. Thank you, F. Young. Thank you, R2 Lane. Thank you to all the wonderful people who have donated in the chat. I truly appreciate you. And let me show you this little creature. His mummy donated. I think is it Carrie or Kerry? I got this wrong before, didn't I? Richardson, lovely, but I won't get wrong. Gorgeous George. Gorgeous George is very lovely. Let me see where is he? There he is. Absolutely lovely. This is Carrie. You're going to email me later and say you picked up my name again. You never said that before. I said that. And Kerry adopted lovely George, saying his history is sketchy until he was about 11, and the following 3 years were very tough. He was vaccinated by his new owners, which set his skin on fire, was misdiagnosed because no one believes about the issues to do with the vaccines, and ended up on Prozac. Poor dog. I had the luck to adopt him 4 years ago next month, and it has been a challenge to get him well, but thankfully now he is healthy and farmer free. People say I saved him, but he saved me too. I totally get that. I totally get how these wonderful animals save us. Yes, isn't he lovely? You're very welcome, all of you. Really, Vicky. I mean, because when you have rescue dogs, generally they come to you already jabbed to high heaven, but my vets know what I'm like. And that is, once that initial stuff is over, we're done. Other than if there's any major stuff that shows up, on which point, of course, I will help. I will do something to assist my doggy. But George is indeed gorgeous, and we love him. Yes, Denise, I'm very surprised that Paul Burgess denied this is going on as well. But, you know, people are coming at it from different places, aren't they? And I suppose that's just the way it goes, yo. I want to read something that was written by the very lovely Monkey on X. Monkey is also a great supporter. And this is what Monkey wrote. And this is about the kind of frenzy that followed. I believe this is about the frenzy that followed Charlie Kirk, but it could be about any of those frenzies. Have a listen. Look at them all, every single time. A frenzy erupts, no reason or rhyme. Something sparks and up they all rise. Vultures circling with hollowed eyes, pecking at scraps, tarring through pain. No shame in the claws, no heart to refrain. Digging like fiends on a corpse, left to rot. Disgusting to watch, their souls forgot. Questions are fair, a search for the truth. But this is a circus, a vile, wretched crew feeding on chaos. They swarm and they prey. Truth's just a carcass. They'll pick clean all day. You're the media now, some blindly hum. Brainwashed, they blur the truth to come. Leave it to pros who know the score. Your noise just muddies water more. Begging for subs, you sink to the floor. Claiming you seek truth, but what's the score? If the greater good is your heart's true core, why chain your wisdom behind a paywall? Your words could soar, set spirits alight, guide lost souls through the darkest night. But coins for truth, it taints the plea. If you're here for good, let your time be free. Aren't you ashamed to make this your career? Digging up, leaving people in fear. You're becoming the enemy you say you despise. Put the crap down and start living your lives. And I know that, I think it's brilliant. And I know that Monkey hates X and hates the way You're the Media Now is a whole big thing on X. And people come up with, X is honestly the leading mis and disinformation platform. It has to be. It's absolutely awful. It's utterly, utterly abhorrent. And you know, some people could say that applies to the discussion that we've had today in some respects. I don't. I think that we've raised some valid issues today that needed to be said. And if you looked at my post bag, you would see why I felt the need to address it the way I have today, because a whole lot of wake up viewers are not happy with the official narrative, and they trust me to be able to manage a discussion about that. And I thank them for that. Thank you very much. Right. Musk is pushing the Zio anti-Islam agenda. He is rather. Shug ditch twatter. Good. Me too. I'm literally only on there a couple of times a week, really to promote Wake Up. Bottom line. Right. You know, I want to talk about, I want to end on something that I'm pretty sure I've talked about today, but you know, there's been so much new happenings that have, and new intelligence that has entered my domain over the last week that I wanted to revisit it. And it's the whole idea of trust yourself. We live in times of great universal deceit. I mean, I'm not even sure. I don't know whether I'm more aware or whether there is more deceit. But either way, it is great universal deceit, which is why it is absolutely vital and important that we are prepared to address and look at major international events such as the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That is important. And the thing about Wake Up is this show is aimed at shedding light on the darkness, on the corruption, on the deceit. And I can also be one who can, even with all my knowledge and my experience, I can also from time to time fall for the propaganda. Because as both Francis and Johnny were talking about, it's so emotive. They hit us with propaganda that is so hugely emotive, and it can make us react and respond, which is one of the reasons I enjoy being off social media, because I can make up my own mind. It is drumstick. That's a reality. Orwell said, in time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Absolutely, right? So I think trusting yourself is so important. Trusting what your instinct says. Even watching this show, there will be things that I say, my guests say, and you're like, that isn't right. That doesn't sit comfortably with me. Well, follow that. You have your instincts for a reason, and we are all in. I studied psychology, and I do understand that there is a science to psychology in that humans can have a very routine, regular way of reacting and responding to things. But there is also individual differences, and that is whatever our life experiences are, that will also be factored into how we respond to things. So anybody, for example, who may have lost a loved one in a violent situation, they will react differently to the Charlie Kirk situation than perhaps you or I might. So because we have to factor in what they've experienced, but it is still so important to trust yourself. And obviously that voice inside is getting increasingly drowned out. There's so much noise. Some people can't now exist without some form of noise, some attendant accompanying noise in the background surrounding them. They can't function. And I would say that get as much distance from noise and sound as you possibly can, because you need to be able to listen to your inner voice. You need to be able to pay attention to your instincts and intuition, as they will contain wisdom. That's where the wisdom lies. Absolutely. And you also, you know what? One of the reasons why some people have difficulty trusting themselves is because they've been treated so badly during their lives that they don't have a decent self-compassion towards themselves. And so if they react in a certain way to a situation, if they instinctively react in a certain way that this is not right, this is not true, this is not accurate, they then dismiss what they say because they may have been abused, they may have been denied a voice, any of those things. So one of the first things that I would say to anybody, and that is, in order to be able to trust yourself, you have to keep continuing to build yourself up. And one of those things definitely is separate yourself out from the noise, but also examine what makes you question you. Because you are your own kind of, wisdom. You're living wisdom. You've experienced so much, and it is your authentic understanding that is crucial in these things. And also, what I will say is another important aspect of trusting yourself is to also embrace the imperfections in yourself. We are not all right, like we are not all wrong. We get things wrong. I certainly do. I try and correct as much as humanly possible that I get wrong. And I think that's important. But also to accept that it doesn't make me a bad person if I get something wrong. That's okay, because I'm only human. But I think some of the most important things in order to be able to understand yourself is to spend some quality time alone. And when I say spend quality time alone, that doesn't mean having a video playing in the background. You really do need some time alone. And that will enable you to be much more decisive about what you're listening to. It's amazing. Some people, it could take a while to start to listen to what you are internally saying, because you might have lots of different voices coming at you. It's difficult to know whose voice that is, whether it's yours, whether it's somebody else that you've experienced when you were growing up, somebody who was critical of you, somebody who put you down. But spending time alone and separating yourself out from the herd, because that's what we are essentially, right, is so important. That solitude will tell you probably everything you need to know, but it might take a while for you to get used to spending time alone. And I think it's really important to be really mindful of where you are at any moment in time. And so if at any given situation, you need to be aware that it's where I am right now. The most basic thing is I am talking into a camera, talking to people live all over the world. That's as mindful as it gets, because that's what I'm doing. I am very much present. I am here. And what that will do is the moment that you acknowledge where you are, all your senses kick into play. Everything that you need in order to be able to understand a situation. But be in no doubt whatsoever, we are in a time of mass manipulation, mass confusion. And it is obviously not only designed to fulfill all these assortment of agendas, but also to mess with you, to make you doubt yourself. And I'm saying, don't stop doubting yourself. You're much more clever than you think. I mean, that is a reality. So many studies have been done about how people perceive themselves to how they really are in the world. And people perceive themselves as often, other than if they're like narcissists, in which case they have a huge inflated sense of their own importance, but they're sick people. But healthy people, generally healthy people who aren't narcissistic and aren't psychopaths and don't have psychological issues, generally tend to see themselves as less attractive than they actually are, and less intelligent than they actually are, and less capable than they actually are, because we've been put into a world where we've been told kind of one size fits all, that we're all the same, that all of our learning should be the same. And what it does is it, creates this, like a military. But we're not like that. We are individuals, and I believe very much in individual difference and trusting yourself. Really important stuff. And, the thing is, I think we've really gotten away from all of that. We used to talk about, didn't we, about like old wives' tales and stuff like that, which of course we can't talk about now. We can't say things like that. But there was loads of wisdom in those sort of stuff, And we really got away from that. And so what we have are sound bites, manipulated, engineered sound bites that go away from authenticity. And in order for us to be able to trust ourselves and listen to what we're really hearing, as opposed to what they're trying to tell us we're hearing, we need to be able to hear nuances as well. One of the reasons that I was able to look at like Kash Patel and all those individuals is because of the way they talk. We can tell so much, can't we, from body language, from speech. But if we are overburdened with what the controllers want us to think, it's very difficult to be able to access that level of wisdom and intelligence, which we instinctively have. So please do absolutely trust yourself. And this is my credits. Of course, these are my wonderful patrons who make this possible, along with all you wonderful people who contribute to Wake Up. I appreciate you all so very, very much. And I want to end on a quote, because that's what we do around here, right? And my quote is, trusting yourself means living out what you already know to be true. That's the reality. Trusting yourself means living out what you already know to be true. Thank you very much. Markuson says this is the coolest, most honest corner of the web. I appreciate that. SMG says the dumbing down of nations. Absolutely. And I love you too, Synchronized Soul. And I hope you're all settled in your new pad now. And thank you too, Shug. Thank you all. I will see you Monday. Have a terrific, terrific weekend. Lots of love to you all. Thank you, of course, to my two amazing guests, Johnny O'Neill and Johnny McNeil, rather, and Francis O'Neill. Wonderful to have them both with us. Take good care of yourself. Cheers, Nikki. Lots of love. See you Monday, peeps.